27 years ago, 6 nuns from an internal disciplinary committee vanished after a closed-door meeting with the diocese. No one saw them leave. The meeting records were wiped from archives as if it had never happened. Years later, a single piece of evidence resurfaced, and the hidden truth began to unravel. What really happened inside those walls? And who tried so hard to keep it buried? It had started as just another cold, gray Monday in late November, the kind that seemed to drape the small Midwest town of Fairhaven in a perpetual twilight. Outside the imposing stone walls of St. Agnes Cathedral, a thin mist hovered, blurring the edges of the ornate stained glass windows and muffling the sounds of traffic passing by. Inside, however, the air was taut with a different kind of tension. Sister Margaret Ellis tightened her grip on the leather strap of her worn briefcase as she approached the arched oak door leading to the conference room. The faint scent of incense still lingered in the hallway from the early morning mass, mixing with the sterile tang of freshly polished floors. The door stood ajar, and through it she could see the familiar faces of the 5 other sisters from the internal disciplinary committee already seated around a long mahogany table. Margaret glanced at the brass plaque on the door one last time, Conference Room B, then she pushed it open and stepped inside. The clock on the wall read 9:02 a.m.e. They had been called to this meeting by Father Thomas Green, the Archdiocese's Director of Clerical Oversight. No specific agenda had been circulated, only a terse email stating that urgent matters concerning ongoing financial inquiries would be discussed. For the 6 women of the committee, each seasoned, each known for their unwavering commitment to integrity, that was enough to ensure their presence. Margaret took her seat beside Sister Clara Monroe, who offered a tight-lipped nod. The others, Sisters Evelyn, Joan, Lucia, and Bernadette, were similarly composed, though Margaret could sense an undercurrent of unease in the room. Then the door creaked again, and Father Green entered. Tall and stooped, with thin silver hair and piercing blue eyes, he carried a small black folder and moved with a deliberate, almost ritualistic precision. Behind him followed 2 unfamiliar men in dark suits, who stood silently against the back wall once Father Green took his seat at the head of the table. "Good morning, sisters," he began, voice calm but clipped. "I appreciate your willingness to convene on such short notice." He opened the folder and withdrew a single sheet of paper, which he placed face down before him. "Before we proceed, I must remind you that the matters we are about to discuss are of the utmost sensitivity and are not to leave this room." A heavy pause followed, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. Margaret exchanged a glance with Clara. This was no ordinary meeting. The session proceeded in a strange cadence. Father Green read aloud a prepared statement, its phrasing vague, its implications chilling. Certain anomalies had been detected in the accounting records of St. Agnes Charitable Trust, anomalies the committee had been independently reviewing for months. Now it appeared the Archdiocese had become aware of the sisters' findings and was seeking to coordinate efforts moving forward. Yet the tone was anything but collaborative. Questions posed by the sisters were met with deflections. Requests for documentation were denied pending further internal review. The men at the back of the room remained impassive, their presence a silent but palpable warning. The conversation soon turned circular, each inquiry met with increasingly terse responses. After nearly 3 tense hours, Father Green finally closed his folder and stood. "Thank you for your time and dedication. You are dismissed. Please remain available for further discussion as needed." Without another word, he and the sisters in stunned silence. The atmosphere felt leaden. Margaret rose slowly, her legs stiff from sitting so long. "That was unsettling," Clara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Agreed," Evelyn said, "but we need to document everything that was said, now." They began gathering their belongings. Margaret retrieved her briefcase and glanced around the room, noting the expressions of her colleagues, grim, resolved. Then, one by one, they filed out into the corridor. Or so it should have been. Hours later, when the cathedral's daily routines resumed and members of the clergy began their afternoon activities, an odd realization dawned. No one had seen the 6 sisters emerge from Conference Room B. By early evening, concern to alarm, the head sacristan, noticing the committee members' absence from evening prayers, made inquiries. No one had seen them in the refectory, their cells were empty, and their personal effects untouched. Calls to their mobile phones went unanswered. Security staff were alerted. The cathedral's modest surveillance system was reviewed, but when technicians examined the feed covering the hallway outside Conference Room B, they found a gap. A 3-hour period during which the cameras recorded nothing but static. A technician swore he had checked the system that very morning. It had been fully operational. Now, the footage from precisely the window of the committee's meeting was inexplicably corrupted. The discovery sent a ripple of panic through the administration. An initial search of the building yielded nothing. There were no signs of forced entry, no indications of struggle within the conference room. The chairs remained neatly arranged, water glasses untouched. Only a faint, lingering chill seemed to have settled over the space. Late that night, the cathedral grounds were secured as local police were discreetly notified. Yet even they could find no immediate explanation for the disappearance. There were no exits from the conference room save the main door, no hidden passages, no alternate routes. It was as if the 6 women had simply vanished. By dawn the next morning, word of the incident had begun to circulate among the broader church community. Whispers of foul play, of conspiracies and cover-ups spread rapidly. Yet the official statement issued by the archdiocese was curiously muted, referring only to an ongoing internal matter. Behind closed doors, however, those few privy to the truth were gripped by a mounting dread. For in the centuries-old stone corridors of St. Agnes Cathedral, where faith and duty had long been the guiding light, a shadow now loomed, one born not of spiritual doubt, but of something far more human. And somewhere, beneath the surface of this ancient institution, secrets were stirring, restless and unresolved. The dawn after the sisters' disappearance broke cold and gray once more, as though the skies themselves refused to shed light upon what had transpired within the stone walls of St. Agnes Cathedral. By mid-morning, the corridors buzzed with a hushed, anxious energy. Word had quietly spread through the clergy and staff. 6 respected members of the internal disciplinary committee had vanished without a trace, following a private meeting with Father Thomas Green. A veil of unease settled over the cathedral, and yet the official channels maintained an eerie silence. Within this atmosphere of dread, Father Michael Lawson, a senior administrator tasked with managing church records and internal communications, found himself summoned to the archdiocese's administrative wing. There, in a sparsely lit office dominated by tall filing cabinets and the faint hum of aging computers, he met with Monsignor Patrick Heller, the archdiocese's chief officer. Heller's expression was taut, his voice low. "Father Lawson," he began without preamble, "we require the complete documentation pertaining to yesterday's meeting of the Internal Disciplinary Committee, biographical records, the meeting agenda, official minutes, attendance logs, everything. We need to ascertain the full record before making any public statement." Understanding the gravity of the request, Lawson nodded and made his way swiftly to the secure archive room where such materials were housed. The archive, nestled in the sub-level beneath the cathedral's east wing, was a windowless chamber lined with temperature-controlled storage units. It had long served as the repository for the ArchDH's most sensitive records. Lawson swiped his ID card and entered the room, the heavy door thudding shut behind him. The fluorescent lights flickered briefly before stabilizing, casting a sterile glow over the rows of steel cabinet. He moved with practiced efficiency to Section C, Row 5, where the disciplinary committee's files were stored. Yet, as he opened the cabinet drawer labeled Internal Disciplinary Committee, 2025, a chill prickled the back of his neck. The drawer was empty, completely empty. No folders, no files, not even a misfiled document. Confused, Lawson double-checked the adjacent drawers. He rifled through nearby sections, his movements growing increasingly frantic. But it was the same everywhere. No trace of the records existed. Certain he must have erred, he hurried to the archive terminal and logged into the digital database, a secure server maintained separately from the general parish system. He entered the committee's unique access code and initiated a search for all documents related to meetings scheduled within the last month. The screen blinked once, then displayed a terse message. No records found. Lawson's heart pounded in his chest. He rechecked the date range, queried backups, each time met with the same stark result. It was as if the committee's existence over the past weeks had been erased. Stunned, he printed a diagnostic report and rushed back upstairs to Monsignor Heller's office. Heller received the printout with a frown, scanning the data with growing incredulity. "This can't be correct," Hamer murmured. "Check the master logs. The meeting was scheduled. I saw the notice myself." Lawson, now visibly shaken, replied, "I'll verify with the scheduling office." Without waiting for dismissal, he strode to the scheduling department, a glass-partitioned suite adjacent to the main administrative hall. There he found Mrs. Ellen Porter, a meticulous woman who had overseen the archdiocese calendar for over 2 decades. When Lawson explained the situation, she raised a perplexed eyebrow. "Father Lawson, I'm quite certain there was no such meeting scheduled yesterday," she said, turning to her workstation. With nimble fingers, she navigated to the archival calendar logs. As Lawson watched, she pulled up the scheduling grid for the entry slots between 9:00 a.m. and noon were blank. "You see," she continued, "Conference Room B was marked as available all morning. I have no record of a booking, nor any notes indicating it was in use." Lawson's mouth went dry. "I attended Mass that morning with several of the sisters. They mentioned having a meeting with Father Green at 9. Porter shook her head slowly. "I can only show you what's in the system, Father, and according to this, no meeting was ever scheduled." Desperate for clarification, Lawson requested a physical audit of the scheduling logs, old-fashioned paper backups maintained as a fail-safe. Together, they retrieved the logbooks from the filing cabinet beside Porter's desk. Page after page showed meticulously handwritten entries, except for November 24th, where the morning block remained eerily pristine, as though untouched by human hand. At this revelation, Lawson's unease deepened. He thanked Porter and hastened back to Monsignor Heller's office. Presenting the new findings, he recounted the conversation verbatim. Heller leaned back in his chair, his features drawn. "Someone is deliberately cleansing the record," he said grimly. "But why?" Lawson could offer no answer. Across the cathedral grounds, meanwhile, whispers continued to grow. Father Green was reportedly absent from his office, unreachable since the previous evening. Security staff had discreetly expanded their search, combing every wing and sub-level of the building. No sign of the missing sisters had emerged. That afternoon, under mounting pressure, Monsignor Heller convened a closed-door meeting with the Archdiocese's legal council and a select few senior clergy. Lawson was invited to present his finding. The legal counsel, a sharp-eyed man named Gerald Whitmore, listened intently before asking, "Is there any chance the system malfunctioned?" Lawson shook his head emphatically. "No, sir, the integrity checks pass. The only plausible explanation is manual deletion by someone with high-level access." The room fell silent. Then Heller spoke. "We must proceed with caution. Public disclosure at this stage would only fuel speculation. For now, this remains an internal investigation." As the meeting adjourned, Lawson lingered by the door. One lingering thought gnawed at him. If the records of the meeting could be so thoroughly erased, what else might already be lost? The following morning brought no respite from the growing unease that gripped St. Agnes Cathedral. With no official explanation and the missing sisters still unaccounted for, staff and clergy alike moved through the halls with lowered voices and furtive glances. Though the Archdiocese attempted to contain the incident, whispers spread quickly among those who worked within the cathedral's aging stone walls. Father Michael Lawson returned to his office with the weight of unanswered questions pressing down upon him. The missing records, the blank schedule logs, the corrupted surveillance footage all pointed to something far more sinister than a mere administrative oversight. His mind raced through the possibilities as he sipped his now-called coffee, his gaze unfocused on the rain-streaked window. Just then a knock at the door broke his window. It was Thomas Griggs, the cathedral's senior maintenance supervisor. The broad-shouldered man rarely ventured into Lawson's office uninvited, and the nervous energy in his posture immediately caught Lawson's attention. "Father, do you have a moment?" Griggs asked, voice low. "Of course, Thomas. Come in." Griggs closed the door behind him and perched uneasily on the edge of a chair. He ran a calloused hand through his thinning hair before speaking. "There's something you should know," he began, glancing toward the door as if fearing eavesdroppers. "Yesterday morning, right before that meeting, one of my staff noticed something odd." Lawson leaned forward. "Go on," Griggs continued. "George, he's one of our custodians. He was on trash duty near the East Wing loading dock around 8:30. Said he saw a large delivery truck parked by the side entrance. It wasn't one of ours, and there's no record of any scheduled deliveries for that day." Lawson's pulse quickened. "Did he see who was driving it?" "No clear look," Griggs admitted. The cab windows were tinted, but he did see two men offloading what looked like empty crates and some large black cases. They moved fast, like they didn't want to be noticed. Lawson frowned. "And this was right before the committee meeting?" Griggs nodded. "Around the same time the sisters would have been arriving?" The implications were chilling. Lawson's mind whirled with the potential connections. "Where is Jorge now? Can I speak with him?" "He's down in the maintenance wing," Griggs replied. "But Father—" "He's scared. Real scared. Said the men in the truck noticed him watching and gave him a hard stare before driving off. He almost didn't want to tell me." "I'll speak to him myself," Lawson said, standing. Moments later, he descended into the maintenance wing, a dim labyrinth of boiler rooms and storage corridors beneath the cathedral. He found Jorge Vasquez in a small break room, nervously nursing a cup of tea. When Lawson entered, Jorge stood quickly. "Father, I didn't mean to cause trouble," he began. "You're not in trouble, son," Lawson assured him gently. "But what you saw could be very important. Please, tell me everything." Slowly, haltingly, Jorge recounted the scene. The truck, plain white, unmarked, had pulled into the side lot just as he was emptying bins. The two men, dressed in dark utility uniforms, had moved with practiced efficiency, ignoring Jorge entirely until they noticed his lingering gaze. Their look of warning had been unmistakable. After a brief unloading, the truck had disappeared down a side street. Lawson took careful notes, pressing for any details, license plate, identifying marks, anything. But Jorge could provide little beyond the unsettling atmosphere of the encounter. Still, it was enough to raise immediate red flags. Back in his office, Lawson relayed the account to Monsignor Heller, who listened with a deepening scowl. "This truck, it may have been part of whatever happened to the sisters," Heller said grimly. "We need to identify it quietly." He instructed Lawson to contact local law enforcement through discreet channels, avoiding official reports that might attract unwanted attention. Meanwhile, another thread of the mystery began to unravel. That same afternoon, Sister Amelia Hartley, a junior member of the disciplinary committee and the youngest of the missing sisters, surfaced in a most unexpected way. News came from the Archdiocese's personnel office. Sister Amelia had submitted an immediate request for reassignment to St. Bridget's Monastery, a remote convent located 2 hours north of the city. The request had arrived via encrypted email late the previous night, authorized with her digital signature. No personal appearance, no explanation. Alarmed by this sudden move, Lawson and Heller attempted to reach her directly. Calls to her mobile phone went unanswered. Emails bounced back with auto-replies. Even the Mother Superior at St. Bridget's reported that Amelia had arrived without prior notice, requesting full seclusion and refusing outside contact. "She seems fragile," the Mother Superior had conveyed in a tense phone call. "Withdrawn, barely speaking. I don't know what she has experienced, but she made it very clear she wished no visitors, not even clergy from the Archdiocese." This development sent another ripple of unease through the investigation. Why would Amelia flee to isolation so abruptly, mere hours after her disappearance? Had she escaped something? Had she been permitted to leave under duress? The questions mounted with no clear answers. Heller convened another internal meeting, now involving trusted legal advisors and discreet security consultants. "We're dealing with something far beyond a simple administrative issue," he warned the group. "We must proceed delicately, but we cannot ignore these signs. Find out everything you can about that truck, and we must find a way to reach Sister Amelia. Her testimony may be crucial." As the meeting adjourned, Lawson remained behind, his mind racing. The missing records, the blank schedules, the mysterious truck, and now Sister Amelia's flight into seclusion, all pointed to a deliberate effort to obscure the truth. But by whom? And why? The answers, it seemed, lay just beyond reach, shrouded in a growing web of silence and fear that threatened to consume all who sought to unravel it. The mounting tension within St. Agnes Cathedral had by now spread beyond its stone walls, bleeding into the broader community of the archdiocese. Though no official statements had been released, the whispers were relentless. Parishioners noticed the absence of the sisters, and questions multiplied. Father Michael Lawson, driven by a gnawing sense of duty and guilt, continued his quiet investigation, with Monsignor Heller's reluctant blessing. Leads remained scarce. The truck's license plate had yet to be identified, and Sister Amelia remained unreachable. Late one rainy afternoon, as the November chill deepened, Lawson received an unexpected call from Father Bernard Walsh, a retired priest who had served at St. Agnes for over 4 decades before moving to a small house near the outskirts of town. Father Walsh had remained active in scholarly circles and maintained an extensive private library. His voice, though worn with age, carried an urgency that Lawson had not heard before. "Michael," Walsh began without pleasantries, "I believe you should come see something. It may pertain to the matter you're investigating." Lawson's pulse quickened. Within the hour, he arrived at the modest brick home nestled amid bare oak trees. Walsh greeted him with a grave expression, ushering him into a study lined with shelves that strained beneath the weight of aged tomes and dusty files. "While reviewing some old committee records," Walsh explained, "I came across this." He produced a thin manila folder, its edges yellowed with time. Inside lay a single typewritten document, a partial copy of a meeting transcript dated June 5, 1997. The header read, "Internal Disciplinary Committee, Special Session." Scrawled across the top margin in faded red ink were the chilling words, "Case 1997, not to be discussed again." Lawson read through the document with growing alarm. Though incomplete, the transcript detailed an emergency session concerning financial discrepancies within the St. Agnes Charitable Trust, the very same trust under scrutiny before the sisters' disappearances. The language was terse, the tone defensive. Mentions of unauthorized allocations and external legal consultation leapt from the page. What's more, several of the names listed as attendees in the document matched individuals who had since risen to positions of considerable influence within the archdiocese. One passage in particular caught Lawson's eye. "In agreement with senior counsel, this committee hereby seals all investigative materials pending higher ecclesiastical review. Further inquiry into Case 1997 is to be suspended indefinitely to preserve institutional stability." It was, in essence, a formal burial of the truth. Walsh observed Lawson's reaction with weary eyes. "I had nearly forgotten this existed," the old priest admitted, "but recent events stirred my memory. I fear history may be repeating itself." Lawson nodded grimly. "May I borrow this?" "Of course," Wesley said, though a flicker of doubt crossed his features. "But tread carefully, Michael. There are forces within the Church that prefer certain matters remain buried." That evening, as Lawson pored over the document under the dim light of his office, another piece of the puzzle surfaced from an entirely different quarter. In a modest suburban home, not far from the cathedral, the family of Sister Joan Delacroix, one of the missing sisters, received a small, battered package with no return address. Sister Joan's younger brother, Daniel Delacroix, retrieved it from the mailbox and carried it inside. His mother, Margaret, opened it with trembling fingers. Inside lay a worn velvet pouch containing a broken rosary, its beads scattered, the crucifix cracked. Margaret gasped as recognition struck her. This was Joan's," she whispered. The rosary had been a family heirloom, passed down to Joan by her grandmother when she took her final vows. Its distinctive silver filigree and blue glass beads were unmistakable. Alongside it, folded carefully, was a single sheet of plain paper bearing a stark message, typed in block letters. "This is your only warning?" Shaken, the family contacted the local police, who in turn notified the archdiocese. When Lawson arrived to examine the package, the sight of the broken rosary sent a chill through him. It was a message, one that suggested the sisters were not merely missing, but in grave danger. "Did anyone see who delivered this?" Lawson asked. Daniel shook his head. "It must have been left during the night. We heard nothing." The police took custody of the package for forensic analysis, though Lawson harbored little hope that it would yield usable evidence. Whoever orchestrated this had proven adept at covering their tracks. Back at the cathedral, Lawson briefed Monsignor Heller on both the transcript and the ominous package. The Monsignor's face grew pale as he read the faded words of the 1997 document. "My God," he murmured. "They buried it once. Now they're trying again, only this time someone refuses to stay silent." He gestured to the broken rosary, "And now they're issuing threats." The implications were undeniable. A shadow network within the archdiocese had long manipulated events to protect its interests. The sisters, by uncovering similar financial malfeasance, had become targets. But there remained a critical unknown. Were they still alive? And if so, where? With this newfound evidence, the urgency of the investigation deepened. Lawson resolved to expand his inquiries beyond the cathedral's confines. Somewhere in the gaps of this tangled history lay the key to unraveling the conspiracy that had already claimed so much. Yet, as he prepared to leave for another late-night meeting, an urgent knock at his office door halted him mid-step. The knock at Father Michael Lawson's door was sharp and insistent. He opened it to find Sister Helen Suarez, a senior member of the Archdiocese's accounting office. Her normally composed expression was visibly strained, eyes darting nervously down the hallway before she stepped inside. "Father Lawson, I need to speak with you, now." "Father Lawson, I need to speak with you, now." Without waiting for a response, she entered and closed the door firmly behind her. "What is it, sister?" Lawson asked, motioning for her to sit. She remained standing, clutching a thin folder tightly to her chest. "It's about the charitable trust." And the sisters. At the mention of the trust, Lawson's pulse quickened. "Go on." Helen took a deep breath. "I've been reviewing internal documents these past few weeks. The disciplinary committee had requested access to certain records, financial statements, grant allocations, and donation ledgers. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Routine due diligence, or so I believed. But after the sisters disappeared and I heard about the broken rosary, I went back and looked more closely." She handed the folder to Lawson. Inside were several spreadsheets, annotated bank records, and a series of flagged transactions. Helen pointed to a column marked "Special Disbursements." "These entries caught my eye," she explained. "Significant sums, over $3 million, moved from the trust's primary account into a series of shell charities, entities with no verifiable operations. From there, the funds vanished." Lawson's brow furrowed as he scanned the documents. The pattern was unmistakable: systematic siphoning of charitable funds, disguised through a web of fictitious organizations. The sums involved were staggering. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. "At least 3 years, perhaps longer," Helen replied. "The sisters must have uncovered it during their review. That's why they pushed for an independent audit 2 weeks ago." Lawson looked up sharply. "An audit? I saw no notice of such an action." Helen nodded grimly. "It was never formalized. They drafted a proposal and submitted it directly to Father Green, bypassing standard channels." That was their mistake. Lawson felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The timeline was becoming disturbingly clear. The sisters' call for transparency had triggered their disappearance. "There's more," Helen continued, lowering her voice. "Sister Evelyn Morris, one of the missing, had approached me about the irregularities. She said the committee intended to consult legal counsel." "Outside the archdiocese?" Helen hesitated, then nodded. "She confided in me that Sister Joan Delacroix was meeting with an attorney, Daniel Klein, a former federal prosecutor, just days before the meeting." This revelation struck Lawson like a blow. Seeking external legal assistance was a dangerous move, one that would have drawn swift retaliation from those determined to keep the scandal hidden. "Do you know if the meeting took place?" he asked. Helen's expression darkened. "Yes. Sister Joan met with Klein at a private office downtown 2 days before the committee session. Afterward, she told Sister Evelyn they had a case. They had enough evidence to proceed." Lawson exhaled slowly, mind racing. The sisters had been on the verge of exposing a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. Now one was unreachable, another was in seclusion, and the rest had vanished without a trace. "Who else knows about this?" he asked. Helen shook her head. "Very few. The records were compartmentalized. I only pieced it together after the fact, but Father Green would have known, and perhaps others in his circle." Lawson felt the weight of the conspiracy pressing in around him. The same network that had buried Case 1997 was clearly active still, ruthless in its determination to silence dissent. He thanked Helen for her courage and urged her to remain vigilant. As she left, he copied the documents and secured them in a hidden compartment within his office. There could be no mistakes now. Too many lives hung in the balance. That evening, driven by grim resolve, Lawson reached out to Daniel Klein. The lawyer agreed to meet discreetly the next morning. Meanwhile, reports filtered in from St. Bridget's Monastery. Sister Amelia remained withdrawn, refusing visitors. But a passing comment from the Mother Superior hinted at deeper trauma. "She is frightened, Father," the mother had said over the phone. "Not merely distressed, terrified. She speaks in fragments, mentions shadows and warnings." Lawson's resolve hardened. The sisters had stumbled upon a truth too dangerous to remain hidden, and someone within the church had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure their silence. As he prepared his notes for the meeting with Klein, another knock sounded at his door. The knock on Father Michael Lawson's door was softer this time, almost hesitant. He opened it to find Gerald Whitmore, the Archdiocese's legal counsel, standing with a worn briefcase in one hand and a grim expression etched across his face. Without waiting for an invitation, Whitmore entered and closed the door behind him. "Father Lawson, we have a problem," he began without preamble. "Go on." Whitmore set the briefcase on the desk and flipped it open, pulling out a stack of printed documents. "Late last night, after reviewing your notes and the file from Sister Suarez, I started digging through our private vendor contracts. I had a feeling," he trailed off, sliding the papers toward Lawson. "And I was right." Lawson leaned forward, scanning the documents. They were contract agreements between the Archdiocese and a private security firm, Sentinel Protective Service. The terms were vague, but disturbing. "Provision of discreet personal security for sensitive operations," one line read. Another clause specified temporary custodial arrangements to ensure the protection of ecclesiastical interests. The signatures included Father Thomas Green and a senior archdiocesan administrator. Lawson looked up sharply. "When was this contract signed?" "Originally 2 years ago," Whitmore replied. "But here's where it gets worse." He pulled another sheet from the stack, a recent invoice and corresponding service log from Sentinel. The date at the top sent a chill down Lawson's spine. November 24th, the day the sisters disappeared. "They were contracted for a full-day operation on the cathedral grounds," Whitmore explained. "Details classified. The only notes specify high parentage asset protection. No mention of who or what the assets were." Lawson's mind raced. "This aligns with Jorge's report about the truck," he said, "and with Sister Amelia's sudden reassignment. Someone used this firm to execute a coordinated operation against the sisters." Whitmore nodded grimly. "I pulled the firm's public records. Sentinel is small but highly selective. Many of its contractors are ex-law enforcement or military. They specialize in sensitive assignments." Lawson exhaled slowly, the implications settling heavily upon him. The missing records, the threats, the truck, and now the private security operation all pointed to an organized effort sanctioned at high levels within the church. "Do we know who authorized this specific operation?" he asked. Whitmore's expression darkened. "The service order came through an intermediary, one of Father Green's trusted aides, now conveniently on leave abroad. The authorization trail ends with Green's office." Lawson's fists clenched. "And Green himself?" "Still unreachable," Whitmore replied. "His phone is off, no activity on his personal account since the day of the meeting." The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they revealed was horrifying. Somewhere within the Archdiocese's leadership, a decision had been made to neutralize the sisters and bury their findings by any means necessary. The use of Sentinel proved premeditation and a willingness to employ force. Lawson's thoughts turned to Sister Amelia, isolated and terrified at St. Bridget's. Had she witnessed the operation firsthand? Was she allowed to leave as a warning to others, or had she escaped? "We need to find her," Lawson said firmly. Whitmore agreed. "I've arranged for a trusted contact in law enforcement to reach out discreetly. Official channels are too compromised. In the meantime, I suggest extreme caution. Whoever orchestrated this isn't finished." Lawson nodded grimly. As Whitmore left, he locked the documents in his secure drawer and reached for his phone. There was one more lead to pursue. That afternoon, under the pretense of routine inquiry, Lawson visited the Archdiocese's Facilities Management Office. There he requested a review of the cathedral's external security footage for November 24th, not just the main feeds but backups and maintenance logs. The technician on duty hesitated. "Father, the primary feeds were corrupted," he said. "You know that." "I'm aware," Lawson replied evenly. "I need to see the maintenance backups." Reluctantly, the technician retrieved a secondary hard drive. Together, they combed through the fragmented footage. Most of it was as expected, static, garbled frames. But at precisely 8:42 a.m., a single intact clip emerged. For barely 3 seconds, the side entrance came into view. And there it was, the white truck Jorge had described, its rear doors open, 2 uniformed men standing beside black cases. Lawson froze the frame. Though the resolution was poor, the Sentinel logo was faintly visible on one sleeve. His heart pounded. "Can you extract this clip?" he asked. The technician nodded. "I'll get you a copy." With the footage secured, Lawson returned to his office and contacted Whitmore. They now had visual confirmation of Sentinel's presence at the cathedral on the day of the sisters' disappearance. The noose was tightening, yet questions remained. Who within the church had given the order? Where were the sisters now? And what leverage did the conspirators hold to keep even a retired priest like Father Walsh afraid to speak openly? As Lawson prepared to pursue the next lead, a new message arrived in his inbox, one that would deepen the mystery even further. The email that arrived in Father Michael Lawson's inbox bore no subject line and originated from an anonymous encrypted address. Its body contained only a few chilling words. "You are close. They are not missing. They are being held. Trust no one." Attached was a low-resolution image, a still from an ATM security camera dated November 27th, 3 days after the sisters' disappearances. Lawson's breath caught as he opened the file. The grainy image showed a woman in a faded habit, her frame gaunt, her posture hunched, as though weighed down by unseen burdens. Despite the poor quality, Lawson recognized the figure instantly. Sister Joan Delacroix. Her face, pale and drawn, was unmistakable. She appeared to be moving hurriedly past the ATM, glancing over her shoulder as if in fear of pursuit. The timestamp and location metadata placed the camera 10 miles east of the cathedral, near a derelict shopping center long known as a haven for the city's transients and forgotten. Lawson's pulse quickened. Joan was alive, or had been, 3 days ago. But what was she doing there, alone and unguarded? And who had captured this image and sent it to him? Without hesitation, he forwarded the file to Gerald Whitmore and instructed him to verify its authenticity. Moments later, he dialed Detective Karen Ellsworth, a trusted friend within the local police department. Karen, known for her tenacity and discretion, had already been quietly assisting Lawson behind the scenes. When she answered, her tone for brisk. "Michael, what have you got?" He explained the situation, sending her the image as they spoke. A pause followed. "I know that area," Karen said grimly. "It's bad. If she was moving through there alone, she was desperate. We need to move fast." They agreed to meet that evening at an off-the-record location to plan their next steps. Meanwhile, the atmosphere within the cathedral grew increasingly strained. Rumors of private security involvement had begun to surface among the staff, and more than one wary glance followed Lawson as he moved through the corridors. Even Monsignor Heller, once a pillar of composure, now carried an air of subdued dread. Late that afternoon, another development shattered the fragile calm. A plain manila envelope arrived at the precinct, addressed to the chief of police. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typewritten in bold capitals. "Stop searching. They are safe for now. Entrance will end this." No return address, no fingerprints, no discernible clues save for one detail. The letter had been postmarked from a suburban district adjacent to the location of the ATM sighting. Karen brought the envelope to Lawson during their clandestine meeting that evening. "Someone's watching," she said grimly, "and they want us to back off." Lawson examined the letter, mind racing. The phrasing was deliberate, coldly pragmatic. Whoever had sent this possessed both the means and the confidence to issue veiled threats to law enforcement. But the note also confirmed a crucial point. The sisters were alive, or at least some of them. "Can't stop now," Lawson said quietly. "This is the first solid lead we've had." Karen agreed. They devised a plan to canvass the area around the ATM discreetly, employing trusted plainclothes officers under Karen's direct supervision. Surveillance footage from neighboring businesses was requested under the guise of a routine investigation. Concurrently, Whitmore succeeded in tracing the anonymous email to a public Wi-Fi hotspot at a bus terminal near the same district. The signal trail ended there, likely a deliberate move, but it reinforced the connection. That night, Lawson returned to his quarters at the cathedral, sleep elusive. He replayed the image of Joan in his mind, haunted by her hollow gaze. What ordeal had she endured, and why had she surfaced only to vanish again? Early the next morning, a new message arrived, this time via an unmarked envelope slid beneath his office door. It contained a single photograph. Joan again, seated on a bench outside the bus terminal, flanked by two men in civilian clothes. Their faces were obscured, but their postures conveyed unmistakable authority. On the back of the photo, a handwritten note. "She tried to run. We brought her back." The message was clear. The sisters were under active surveillance, their movements tightly controlled. Yet someone within the opposing faction was leaking these glimpses to Lawson, risking exposure to aid his search. Who and why remained a mystery. As Lawson pondered these questions, Karen called with a new report. One of her officers had recovered partial footage from a gas station near the ATM site. The same white truck Jorge had described was visible in the background, parked for nearly 30 minutes before the timestamp on the ATM image. The implication was chilling. Senator's operatives were still moving the area. They're using mobile containment, Karen surmised, moving them around to avoid detection. Lawson felt a surge of grim determination. The window of opportunity was narrow. Each new sighting could be the last. They had to act decisively. Yet as he prepared to escalate the search, a coded message arrived from Whitmore, one that would shift the entire investigation onto a far more dangerous path. The coded message from Gerald Whitmore arrived via a secure app on Father Michael Lawson's phone, a simple prompt urging an immediate in-person meeting. Without hesitation, Lawson made his way through the cathedral's shadowed corridors to Whitmore's discreetly rented office off-site, a dim room tucked between an abandoned bookstore and a shuttered pharmacy. Whitmore greeted him with an uncharacteristically tense expression. "He's had a breakthrough," he began, locking the door behind them. A source came forward, one of the internal IT staff. "He's frightened, but willing to talk." Lawson's pulse quickened. "Who?" "Mark Taylor, mid-level systems analyst. He claims he was ordered explicitly to erase all digital traces of the internal disciplinary committee's activities. The order came directly from the bishop's office." Lawson sat heavily, absorbing the weight of the revelation. "The bishop himself?" Whitmore nodded grimly. "More specifically, his chief of staff, acting under verbal instruction. No written record, of course." The implications were staggering. The conspiracy extended to the highest echelons of the archdiocese's leadership. The bishop's office had not merely turned a blind eye, it had actively facilitated the cover-up. Whitmore produced a flash drive. Taylor extracted partial logs before executing the wipe. He was ordered to purge all meeting records, internal communications, even personnel files tied to the committee. The deletion was thorough but not perfect. Here, one of the last flagged entries. Lawson examined the file. The timestamp matched the morning of the sisters' disappearance. The access log showed multiple entries from privileged administrator accounts, traceable to the bishop's inner circle. "This proves intent," Lawson murmured. "They knew. They planned this." Whitmore's voice was grim. "It also means we can no longer trust the institutional structure. Anyone still operating inside official channels is compromised." As they strategized their next move, another bombshell detonated across the archdiocese. News broke that Father Benedict Krause, former director of the St. Agnes Charitable Trust and a central figure in its financial operations, had been found dead in what police were calling a tragic accident. According to initial reports, Krause had fallen from a second-story balcony at his private residence late the previous night. No witnesses, no surveillance, cause of death: blunt force trauma. Lawson read the news alert with mounting dread. The timing was no coincidence. Krause had overseen the trust's financial dealings during the period flagged by the sisters' audit request. He had motive to fear exposure, and now, conveniently, he was silent. Karen Ellsworth called within the hour, her voice taut. "Michael, this isn't an accident. The scene was staged. We found evidence of forced entry, but no sign of theft. Whoever did this wanted him dead, not his valuable." Lawson's mind raced. "You think he was going to talk?" "I'd bet my badge on it," Karen replied. Word is, Kraus had been increasingly paranoid, mentioned he was being followed to one of his confidants. The noose was tightening, not around the perpetrators, but around those who knew too much. The purge had begun in earnest. "Safe is Mark Taylor?" Lawson asked. "For now, he's under watch, but we can't protect everyone indefinitely." Whitmore leaned forward. "We need to escalate. Take this to federal level if we must. The local machinery is compromised." Lawson nodded. The pattern was clear. Those threatening the conspiracy's stability were being silenced one by one. First the sisters, now Kraus. Who would be next? Late that night, as Lawson reviewed the extracted IT logs, another anomaly surfaced. One of the administrator accounts used in the deletion bore a unique digital fingerprint, an identifier linked not to a staff member but to an external consultant, retained for systems optimization. The name listed sent a fresh chill through Lawson. Sentinel Protective Services, the same private security firm now implicated in the sisters' disappearance. The same firm seen on the ATM footage. The same firm whose operatives had shadowed Sister Joan. The conspiracy was more deeply entwined than they had imagined, spanning digital manipulation, physical coercion, and high-level ecclesiastical collusion. Lawson composed a coded message to Karen. "Sentinel involved in data purge. We need to move on this fast." Moments later, a reply came. "Agreed. Be careful. They're watching us too." As dawn approached, a new lead surfaced, one that would force Lawson and his allies to confront the darkest depths of the conspiracy yet. The grim revelations of the past 48 hours weighed heavily on Father Michael Lawson as he sat in the dim confines of Whitmore's office. The extracted IT logs and the news of Father Kraus's suspicious death replaying endlessly in his mind. The stakes had escalated beyond anything he had imagined, and the pervasive sense of being watched only sharpened the urgency of their investigation. Then, as dawn approached and the first slivers of pale light crept through the blinds, a message arrived that would shift the entire trajectory of the case. It came via an encrypted line from Daniel Klein, the independent attorney who had previously met with Sister Joan Delacroix. Contacted by Sister Amelia Hartley, safe for now, willing to cooperate. Has critical evidence. Within an hour, Lawson and Whitmore were seated across from Klein in a nondescript conference room within a neutral legal office downtown. The tension in the air was palpable as Klein relayed the astonishing development. "She reached out last night," Klein began, voice low and measured. "Apparently her family received an anonymous threat, photos of her younger brother accompanied by a warning to censure her continued silence. That pushed her over the edge. She's terrified, but determined not to let them win." He slid a small USB drive across the table. She recorded the entire meeting on her phone, the one where Father Green met with the disciplinary committee. She hid the device in her habit. Lawson's fingers trembled slightly as he picked up the drive. "Does she know what's on it?" "Only part," Klein replied. "She hasn't had the strength to listen to it all, but she said Father Green threatened them explicitly, told them to abandon the investigation or face consequences." Without delay, Whitmore connected the drive to a secure laptop and played the file. The audio crackled to life, faint but discernible. Voices emerged, first the familiar cadence of Father Green, calm and cold. "Ladies, I urge you to consider your position carefully. The matters you pursue are dangerous, not just to this institution, but to yourselves." A murmur of protest from one of the sisters, likely Joan or Evelyn. Then Green again, sharper now. "You will cease this inquiry. You will destroy your findings. Failure to comply will result in intervention." The implication was unmistakable. Lawson's stomach churned as the recording continued, documenting the sisters' courageous refusal to back down, an act that had evidently sealed their fate. When the playbook ended, silence hung heavy in the room. "This is the leverage we need," Whitmore said quietly. "But it won't be enough on its own. We need corroborating physical evidence." As if in answer to that need, another breakthrough arrived. Detective Karen Ellsworth, who had been tirelessly combing through surveillance data and vehicle logs, contacted Lawson with urgent news. "We pulled GPS data from the assigned vehicle of Sister Evelyn Morris," Karen reported. "There's something you need to see." At the precinct, Karen displayed the tracking data on a large monitor. The vehicle's movements on November 24th were clear. It had left the cathedral as scheduled, but instead of proceeding toward St. Agnes Convent, it had diverted sharply southeast. The signal then traveled along an industrial corridor before terminating at a disused warehouse complex on the outskirts of the city. "It stayed there for over 12 hours, Karen continued. "Then the signal was lost, likely tampered with." Lawson stared at the map, heart pounding. "Have we searched the location?" Carol nodded grimly. "We sent a team in under the radar. What they found confirms our worst fears." She produced a series of photographs, a dimly lit warehouse interior marked by recent activity. Scuffed floorboards, discarded distraints, and in one corner, remnants of cloth matching the sisters' habits. "It was a holding site," Karen said, "and likely not the only one. But the presence of their vehicle data gives us grounds for a deeper investigation." The pieces were aligning at last: testimony, physical evidence, a digital trail. Yet the danger remained acute. Karen cautioned that Sentinel operatives had been sighted near the precinct, a clear message that the conspirators were aware of their progress. "We have to move carefully," she warned. "The more pressure we apply, the more desperate they'll become." That night, as Lawson compiled the mounting evidence, another encrypted message arrived from Sister Amelia, one that would propel the investigation into its most dangerous phase yet. The encrypted message from Sister Amelia, received just before dawn, contained a single line: "They are moving them tonight. Industrial site still active. Please hurry." Attached was a partial location log she had intercepted from an insider sympathetic to the sisters' plight, an urgent plea that galvanized the investigation into immediate action. With the mounting evidence, the GPS data, the audio recording, the physical findings at the warehouse, Detective Karen Ellsworth and her team presented the full dossier to the regional FBI office that same morning. The gravity of the case and the apparent obstruction of justice by high-ranking East Texaco officials triggered swift intervention. By midday, a federal judge had signed an emergency warrant authorizing a full-scale search and seizure operation at the warehouse complex, identified in Sister Evelyn's vehicle logs. The atmosphere at the FBI command post crackled with tense energy as agents prepared to move. Lawson, Whitmore, and Karen watched from the sidelines as tactical units were briefed, their faces set with grim determination. The raid commenced under the cover of twilight. Black SUVs and unmarked vans converged on the decrepit warehouse, their engines humming softly against the encroaching night. Agents in tactical gear breached the structure with precision, sweeping through the darkened interior in coordinated teams. Within minutes, a series of shouts echoed through the comms channel. Contact had been made. Lawson and Karen arrived on site shortly after, escorted by federal agents. The scene that greeted them was harrowing. In a partitioned back chamber, 4 of the missing sisters were found alive, though barely. Emaciated, dehydrated, and exhibiting signs of severe psychological trauma, they huddled together on thin mattresses, flinching at the sudden influx of light and sound. Medical teams moved swiftly, stabilizing the women before transporting them to a secure medical facility. Tears welled in Lawson's eyes as he recognized Sisters Evelyn, Clara, Lucia, and Bernadette. Their haunted gazes spoke volumes of the ordeal they had endured: weeks of isolation, manipulation, and fear. Yet amidst the relief, tragedy shadowed the rescue. In an adjacent room, agents discovered the lifeless body of Sister Joan Delacroix. A preliminary examination indicated she had succumbed to complications from an untreated chronic illness, her condition exacerbated by the inhumane conditions of confinement. The news struck Lawson and the investigative team with a profound sorrow. Joan, whose courage had driven the committee's pursuit of truth, had paid the ultimate price. Foreign CAF teams documented the scene meticulously, preserving every shred of evidence. In the days that followed, the FBI's investigation expanded rapidly. Under intense federal scrutiny, the conspiracy involvement was confirmed through digital records and witness testimony. Several of their operatives were arrested and charged with unlawful detention, conspiracy, and other federal offenses. The broader conspiracy reached into the heart of the archdiocese. With mounting pressure and incontrovertible evidence, multiple senior officials, including members of the bishop's inner circle, were indicted on charges ranging from obstruction of justice to conspiracy and financial fraud. Father Green, though initially in hiding, was apprehended during an attempted border crossing and brought to stand trial. The scandal rocked the church to its core. Amid international media coverage and public outrage, the Vatican issued an unprecedented statement acknowledging institutional failures and pledging comprehensive reforms. The Pope himself expressed profound sorrow and extended personal condolences to the families of the affected sisters. In the aftermath, the surviving sisters faced an agonizing decision. Though offered the option to return to religious life, all four chose instead to seek new identities under federal protection. Their faith intact, but their trust in the institution irrevocably shattered. Sister Amelia, whose bravery had been instrumental in exposing the conspiracy, likewise entered protective custody. She later revealed that it had been her, driven by guilt and desperation, who had sent the anonymous messages and ATM footage, acts of defiance that ultimately saved her sisters. Months passed, the legal proceedings unfolded with painstaking deliberation, convictions were secured, reforms were enacted, yet beneath the surface, scars remained. For Lawson, the events had left an indelible mark, a sobering reminder of the darkness that could fester even within sanctified walls. One crisp autumn morning, nearly a year after the rescue, Lawson visited St. Agnes Cathedral once more. The air was sharp, the sky a clear expanse of blue. As he approached the familiar facade, he noticed a small gathering near a newly installed statue of the Virgin Mary, nestled within a quiet alcove of the courtyard. Drawn by curiosity, he joined the onlookers. The statue, rendered in serene white marble, bore an inscription at its base, 6 simple names etched into the stone. No dates, no titles, no official dedication, just 6 names, a silent testament to courage and sacrifice. Among the gathered was Margaret Delacroix, Sister Joan's mother. Lawson approached her quietly. "She was brave," he said softly. "They all were." Margaret nodded, her voice a whisper. "And they will not be forgotten." Together they stood in reverent silence, the shadows of the past tempered by the light of truth hard won. In the stillness, the statue bore witness, not to the failings of the Church, but to the unwavering resolve of those who had dared to challenge them. Before we wrap up, what do you think about this case? Which detail shocked you the most, and do you believe justice was truly served? Let us know in the comments below, and also tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers all over the world. If you found this story as gripping as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future investigations, and give this video a like to help us share it with more curious minds. See you in the next story.